Joe Biden wants you to know that you should stop complaining about all the spending because he is changing lives at a union event in Philadelphia yesterday. He never said he was changing them for the better, but he wants you to know that he is changing lives. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. The January 6th committee comes back again. Liz Cheney has a message for you ahead of today's hearings, but Meghan McCain reminds you that this entire thing flopped. So we'll talk just a bit about what was going on with that. Squad Rep Bowman warns of a civil war if the GOP takes the midterms. But don't worry, that's not an insurrection by any stretch of the imagination. So we'll talk just a bit about what's happening with that. And Joe Manchin comes out and tells you what he thinks on the gun deal. And given all the support for Joe Manchin over this past Congress, his answer might surprise you. It is going to be all this and more. Welcome to midterm season. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Oh man, you guys, what a mess of news today. This is kind of a crazy one, and we're all over the place. We got a lot of stuff. I'm going to try to fly along so we get through this stuff, but I mean, you know how it goes around here. And in fact, what do we have? A very extended finance segment today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'll call that on the edge of an 8 because it's balanced budget. 9 articles just on what the finance was, just because of the dump that the Dow took yesterday, and that it's looking like it's going to take again today too. They're saying the futures are up once again, and we are officially in bear market territory. But I don't know. It seems like investors are trying to jump on, trying to hold it back up artificially just because they don't want this to go back down. They don't want vulnerable voters to lose out on their 401ks. So, and it just seems like every time they crank the numbers back up, more people look at this and say, hey, if I sell now, I'm not going to lose my ass on it. And then they go back and they sell off again. But we'll see what happens. Of course, the futures do not indicate what's going to happen in the next regular trading session because, I mean, as we saw the day before yesterday, the futures were up significantly, and yet the Dow dumped off another 800 points throughout the day yesterday. So we'll see what's happening with that. We're going to head into it. But before we do, make sure you guys go check out the great programming that will be up and coming and ready to go on the Turns of Pages Productions Network. And I'm talking, of course, about the Daily Ignoramus, the Breakdown with Breckenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, and the Porch Boys. Go check out all those shows. They're all great friends of this. John of the Porch Boys starting up a gaming series to compete with my gaming series. So that'll be kind of fun. We'll see what happens with that. And unfortunately, he doesn't go out and game on Twitch, so we can't go out and do the raid, unfortunately. We can't go out and hold our gaming session on until when he's on and then go raid him. But, you know, such is life. We'll see what happens with that, and we'll see where that goes, of course. And I might just go off and do another big, long roast at some point on one of my game streams so we can sit here and go uninterrupted after everything else is clean. But we'll see what is happening with that. We'll continue to see where this goes and go check out all of those great creators. In on the finance for the morning, looking in and seeing the Dow yesterday got itself to another 52-week low. Its 52-week low, after being adjusted, is down to 30,144.23, where it dipped down to briefly yesterday. Right on the edge of going down under 30,000, which I think is kind of funny because all we heard about a year ago was how great it was and how the stock market was unstoppable, and we were trucking towards 40,000 before the midterms. And I mean, it could still possibly happen, but it doesn't look likely at this point. So we'll continue to watch this and see where this goes. But yeah, it just dropped below the previous close, and it never came. Well, it came back up briefly, and then it just stayed down. They tried to spike it. They tried to spike it numerous times, and it just kept falling off. But the futures are up for what we see. We'll see what happens with that as we go. Looking in at the Bitcoin, I think we're kind of on the dip territory right now. 21,105 US dollars is where it's at, which means that I'll probably throw a little bit more into it. How could you not at this price, knowing where it could go? I mean, you're not going to make huge money on it unless, of course, you're going out and mortgaging your house and selling every asset that you have and selling all your gold and putting it all into Bitcoin. You're not going to make money on it either way, but, you know, it's still a little bit of fun to turn 20 bucks into 65 bucks. So this is, of course, not official financial advice. Always check with your financial advisor and do not spend more than you can afford to spend if you do want to play with Bitcoin for a little bit. It's not your savior, it's not your saving grace, but it's a little bit of fun to play with every once in a while. But that's what we see off of that. For gas, it appears that there may be a slight decline on gas coming up, going into the 4th of July holiday. The Costco has come down to $4.61, which, I mean, we saw some 461s around the DeForest and Sun Prairie area yesterday, but the 464s are still there, but no more 465s being reported by Gas Buddy right now. So a slight ease off, possibly. We'll see what happens with that and where that goes, but we'll continue to watch this and see. It is holding surprisingly steady as compared to other places across the country. So something to watch, and, you know, that's always going to affect everybody's finances as we go. Let's see what IBD has to say for the morning. And again, see if we can't fly through the rest of these so we can go talk about Biden. Starting with Investors Business Daily. Let's get the live chat up. Dow futures rise, but market awaits supersized Fed rate hike. From Ed Carson. Futures rose solidly early Wednesday along with the S&P and the NASDAQ, while Bitcoin continued to tumble, bringing us all the way back up to the top in a Father's Day sale. That is this weekend, isn't it? The stock market correction had a mixed session on Tuesday as Treasury yields continued to run sharply higher. Investors are focused on Wednesday's Federal Reserve meeting announcement, with policymakers set to approve either a big or very big Fed rate hike. Quanta Services, Health Equity, Cheniere Energy, Dollar Tree, Li Auto are stocks to watch. All are showing strong relative strength lines, even if the share prices are struggling to hold. Cheniere Energy is on the IBD leaderboard. Quanta Services is on the IBD leaderboard watch list and the IBD Big Cap 20. Li Auto is on the IBD 50. Health Equity was Tuesday's IBD stock of the day. Meanwhile, Tesla reversed modestly higher after moving towards May 24th low of 620.54. Tesla stock closed up 2.4% to 662.67, but far off its November peak of 1243.49 high. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is likely to release collision data involving driver assist systems within the next few days, singling out the high number of Tesla Autopilot incidents. The NHTSA has been expanding a Tesla Autopilot probe. For the Fed meeting, a two-day Fed meeting ends today with the announcement at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, followed by Fed Chief Jerome Powell's press conference in the wake of Friday's hot CPI report that showed inflation hitting a 40-year high of 8.6%. Speculation grew that the Fed policymakers would hike rates by 75 points on Wednesday, not just 50 points. The Fed doesn't like to surprise, and Powell said after the May Fed meeting that 75 points was off the table, but it's still possible the central bank raises rates by 50 basis points, with Powell then signaling 75 basis points are on the table for July or September. I mean, if you're going to keep pulling months like this, you might have to go up to 100 basis points. And it's going to suck for the housing market. But you still need to do it. But after Fed officials apparently leaked to the Wall Street Journal on Monday that a supersized hike is being considered, markets see a 75 basis point move as overwhelmingly likely. On the futures, Dow futures climbed 0.7% versus fair value, S&P 500 futures advanced 0.85%, and the Nasdaq rose 0.9%. The 10-year yield fell 11 basis points to 3.37%, which means that it was encroaching on 3.5%. Remember again, they kept saying that 1.78% was ridiculously high, and now we're at almost 3.5%. Crude oil prices fell slightly. Natural gas futures rose modestly after Tuesday's crash. The Bitcoin price is just above 21,000 after hitting a fresh 18-month low overnight, or just above 20,000 amid broader concerns about cryptocurrencies. Chinese economic data for May came in slightly better than expected amid still heavy COVID restrictions. Retail sales fell 6.7% versus a year earlier, topping views for a 7.1% decline. Production rose 0.7% versus forecast for a 0.7% drop. And April's 2.9% decline, with Shanghai essentially ending its lockdown on June 1st. Economic activity should rebound within this month. And after all this, remember, Dow futures action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So that's what we see off of that. Let's get into some of this other data, as we have seen already from CNN of all places. All of Biden's stock market gains have evaporated. From Paul R. LaMonica. Biden may not be as obsessed with the stock market as his predecessor was, at least not publicly. Gee, I wonder why that could be. But this year's turmoil on Wall Street has dealt the president a tough blow. The S&P has lost all of its gains since Biden was inaugurated last year. The S&P, one of the broadest measures of the U.S. stock market, and the economy is down 2.7% since January 20th of 2021. Stocks fell into the red for the Biden era following Monday's 3.9% market plunge. The Blue Chip Index, which includes companies such as Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Elon Musk's Tesla, and Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway as top members, has plummeted 21% this year alone. It's a stark turnaround for the Biden stock market. The S&P 500 was up nearly 24% from Inauguration Day through the end of last year. But the combination of surging oil and gas prices following Russia's invasion of the Ukraine, it's Putin's price hike, it's Putin's stock market. Broader inflation worries resulting from continued supply chain disruptions and fears about aggressive interest rate hikes by the Federal Reserve has sent the market into a tailspin in 2022. Many experts are quick to point out the stock market is not the overall economy. What happens on Wall Street doesn't always directly impact the people on Main Street, especially those who aren't active investors. Yeah, that's the truth, because if it was reflecting what's happening to us on Main Street, the Dow would be under 10,000 right now. However, consumer confidence and sentiment measures often mirror the ups and downs of the market. Even if people aren't investing in stocks, they read about the chaos on Wall Street on their smartphones and see coverage of it on television. Many Americans have exposure to the market through company 401k plans and other retirement accounts. There has been a boom in interest in the markets, thanks to the epic rise and subsequent fall of meme stocks such as GameStop and AMC. And some average investors have started to dabble in Bitcoin and other cryptos, which have recently endured an even more spectacular crash than most stocks. As I mentioned, all this could pose a problem for Biden and Democrats in the upcoming midterm elections. But if there's any consolation for Biden, the market implosion during the early stages of his presidency is not as bad as some of those experienced by his predecessors. Yeah. But for most of our lifetimes, it's still bad, especially for most of our adult lifetimes. I think Helton is going to be the only one among us right now who was probably there for all of them and active in the markets, active in the economy at the time. I think most of us were either not born when Reagan came in or not old enough to participate in the markets at least. So that's what we see coming off of that. Let's grab one from the Daily Mail. The White House says Biden has sparked historic economic boom as Dow plunges into bear market amid record inflation, high gas prices, and recession fears. Claims Americans are well positioned to face the challenges thanks to the president. If I am well positioned to face challenges, it's not because of who the president is. I don't care who the president is. If I'm in a place to weather a market like this, it has nothing to do with what's happening on Capitol Hill or on the other side of the mall. That much I can tell you without a shadow of any sort of a doubt. From Emily Gooden, the White House defended President Biden's economic record on Monday as the nation experienced historic inflation and gas prices over $5 a gallon and the stock market dropping. White House Press Secretary Token Diversity Hire argued that President Biden actually made historic economic gains, which would help the American people go through these economic challenges. She blamed inflation. Prices in May were 8.6% higher a year earlier, the greatest increase since '81 on the pinko-pox pandemic and the Russian President Putin's war in Ukraine. You know, with this price, high inflation coming out every once in a generation, global pandemic, and all these things play a factor, Diversity Hire said. But she argued that America would bounce back under Biden. What's my line? The American people are well positioned to face these challenges because of historic economic gains that were made under this president in the last 6 months, she noted. What gains?
But we are coming out of the strongest job market in American history, and that matters. And that a lot of that is thanks to the American Rescue Plan, which only Democrats voted for that. Republicans did not, and it led to this economic boom, this historic economic boom that we're seeing
Didn't it
with
also
jobs.
lead to historic inflation?
No, that is
No?
not. That is not how we're seeing the American Rescue Plan.
I will say this. I believe she's got better. I know I was just making fun of her inability to read something that isn't from a script, but it does look like she is somewhat improving. Not by a huge margin, but somewhat improving. All right, let's grab one from CNN. Biden acknowledges inflation is sapping the strength of a lot of families as economists prepare for the Fed to raise interest rates. From Katie Sullivan. You know what? I'm actually going to save this because this will go on with what we were just saying with the union one. We'll save that one. News for Jacksonville. 2023 recession likely, but it's not as bad as everyone thinks, financial expert says. From Bree Isam. U.S. stocks sank into bear market territory Monday as Wall Street investors worry about interest rate hikes and inflation. The S&P is more than 20% below its record set earlier this year. According to one expert who spoke with News for Jacksonville, the market usually drops 30% during a recession, so he thinks that it will be at least 2023 before the country will be in a recession. But it's not as bad as everyone thinks here, said Joe Creer, partner at IIWII Trading. And the reason that we're likely to head into a recession is because right now we have the opposite of a recession. We have growth, and it's a little bit out of control. Dude, the GDP shrank last quarter, and it's on track to do it again this quarter. What growth do you see? Creer said the actual definition of a recession is just 2 quarters of shrinking U.S. growth. He said the country would still be growing, just growing at a slower rate. He explained that how the economy got so fragile. It's built up because we had the pinko pox and we had relief packages by both Trump admin and the Biden admin, he said, and that put a lot of cash into people's hands. Then all of a sudden the economy starts heating up and everyone's got cabin fever on top of that. So then they want to go spend that money, and that's where we're seeing some runaway inflation right now. Yeah, it has nothing to do with the fact that they keep passing bills in Congress, especially $40 billion going to another country that we don't have, and then it's just turn on the money printer. Kind of waiting for that aid package to drop because it's about that time. It's about that point in the month for that to drop, isn't it? Creer said that because people keep spending, the Federal Reserve will do things to try to slow the economy to stop people from spending. And their primary tool to slow things down is to raise interest rates, which they'll do tomorrow and Wednesday. So the fear is that when they raise the rates, they'll raise them too far, he said. But what happens is it's harder for companies to do business when interest rates are higher, so their profits shrink and their stocks go down. Some economists are speculating the Fed on Wednesday may raise rates, its key rate by 3/4 of a percentage point. That's triple the usual amount, and something the Fed hasn't done since 1994. Creer said it could be out as far as 2023 before a recession hits because consumers are so flush with cash right now. What? Again, I have to ask, where are these consumers that are flush with cash? Who do you know that is flush with cash right now? Other than the Bidens themselves. Congratulations on sitting up on your ivory tower. Brief one off this from CNN. The stock market is demanding the Fed take historic action on inflation, from Dave Goldman. The market won't be satisfied unless the Fed takes a drastic action on inflation. Investors now overwhelmingly predict the Fed will raise its rate by a remarkable 0.75% at the conclusion of its policy meeting. That hasn't happened since '94 when Alan Greenspan ran the Fed. After raising rates by a half point in May, the action the Fed hasn't taken since 2000, Chair Jerome Powell pledged more of the same until the central bank was satisfied that inflation was under control. 94, wouldn't that be about the midterms on the Clinton presidency? By the way? Interesting how that works. After raising rates by a half point in May, an action the Fed hasn't taken since 2000, Jerome Powell pledged more of the same until the central bank was satisfied inflation was under control. At that point, the Fed would resume standard quarter-point rate hikes, he said. But after May's hotter-than-expected inflation report, Wall Street is increasingly calling for tougher action from the Fed to keep the prices under control and keep the little people like you and me out of the market. Goldman Sachs on Tuesday joined Jefferies and Barclays in predicting that the Fed would hike rates by 0.75 of a point, also referred to as a 75 basis points this week. There may have been some so-called Fed whispering taking place this week too. Wall Street Journal reported Monday the Fed would consider a larger than anticipated hike in its policy meeting this week. So it is looking like that's going to happen, which means for those of you who are hoping to buy a home once the market crashes, good luck and Godspeed to you. All right, 2 more. 3 more, I'm sorry. Wall Street's favorite recession indicator is flashing red. Coming to the New York Post, originally published by Fox Business, a closely watched recession predictor in the bond market just flashed red, spurring fresh concern the U.S. economy is on track for a downturn this year as a result of the Fed's war on inflation. The spread between the 2-year and 10-year yields inverted this week for the first time since April on fears that the Fed's aggressive approach to tackling the hottest inflation in 4 decades could lead to a sustained slowdown in growth. The phenomenon, which is rare, has been a historically accurate predictor of recessions. Yields on the 2-year Treasury note climbed as high as 3.431% during morning trading on Tuesday, rising above those on 30-year bonds, which fell to 3.277%. The move reflects fears on a Fed policy error and an impending recession, according to Mark Hackett, Chief of Investment Research at Nationwide. Yield curve inversions are viewed as a good recession predictor because it suggests that investors believe, with the interest rate on long-term bonds lower than on short-term bonds, economic growth is slowing. Every recession in the past 60 years was preceded by an inverted yield curve, according to research from the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. There are growing fears on Wall Street that the U.S. central bank will trigger a downturn as it raises interest rates at the fastest pace in 2 decades, following a scorching hot Labor Department report released last week that showed consumer price index rose 8.6% in May from a year ago, faster than expected. It marks the fastest pace of inflation since December of 1981. If you don't have some basic supplies, a big pack of toilet paper, maybe 2, depending on how big your family is, some canned meats, some canned vegetables, not frozen, canned. Now might be the time to start to do so. Now might be the time to start thinking about doing something like that because it's coming, you guys. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. And if I am wrong, you got your bag of rice, your can of beans, some canned meats and stuff like that. I mean, Spam on an omelet is delicious. Spam itself will keep you alive. If you have nothing else, you can reach into the cabinet and grab that familiar blue can and get your protein intake for a couple days. And if I'm wrong, you mix it up and throw it in eggs and it's there. Or it'll keep for, what does Spam keep for, like 50 years? But it's coming. And again, I remember what it was like in 08. And if the housing market does what I think it's going to do, I mean, this is going to make 08 look like a cakewalk. So, I'm not saying panic. I'm just saying every time you go to the grocery store, grab a can of tuna, a can of Spam, a can of green beans, while they're cheap. Don't buy the whole shelf of them, but grab 1 or 2 every time you go through. It's an extra $4 on your excessively inflated grocery bill already. All right, and since Quest Banning gets excited about the words balanced budget, let's grab one from the Daily Wire. Inside, Rand Paul has planned to balance the federal budget in 5 years. From Ben Ziesloft. I think this guy has executive ambitions, which I'm not opposed to that. I'm not for it because I don't like the executive branch in and of itself, but I'm not opposed to if we have to have somebody in there being Rand Paul. Senator Rand Paul released a new plan on Monday to balance the federal budget within 5 years. The national debt has surpassed $30 trillion, exceeding economic output by 143% and equating to nearly 243% in obligations per taxpayer. According to the U.S. debt clock, in response, Paul released his 6-penny plan, a 5-year course that relies on cutting 6 cents for every dollar of federal spending. We're now in a situation that a simple penny, 2, 3, or even 5 pennies per dollar reduction is insufficient to balance our budget. It requires 6, Paul said in a press release. We cannot keep ignoring this problem at the expense of taxpayers, and my budget will put our nation on track to solve this crisis that Congress created. Okay, Rand, love you. Love what you do. What can we do when we look at all the federal spending to get this down to a dime per dollar? Hey, I would go as far as a quarter per dollar. Let's do that. You want to talk about balance the budget. Legislation would produce $65.8 billion budget surplus by fiscal year 2027, according to Fox Business, which first obtained a copy of the report. The plan calls for cuts across all spending categories, except for Social Security, although it does not lay out specifics. It would require members of Congress to deliberate within framework. Rather than increasing taxes, the framework for federal spending would drop annually after its $5.9 trillion allotted for fiscal year 2023. Largely because of federal stimulus packages responding to the pinko pox and the lockdown-induced recession, the budget deficit reached $3.1 trillion in 2022 and $2.8 trillion, in 2020, 2.8 in 2021, U.S. Office of Management and Budget data reveal. Yeah? How much is it now? With aid to Ukraine, and aid to Ukraine, and aid to Ukraine. The press release from Paul's office noted that if Congress had adopted the 5-year spending freeze Paul proposed in 2011, the federal budget would be balanced this year. Despite the repeated offering of a similar spending freeze and reduction plans, the debt has continued to grow. Congress's refusal to accept the responsibility to act as good stewards of American taxpayer dollars has caused our bleak financial position, the release said. Americans everywhere are feeling the effects of historic high inflation and sustaining labor and supply issues. Short-term political gains of the past are in fact causing us harm now, not to our children and grandchildren of the future, but to us here today. Let's see. Much of the spending emerged from the pinko pox stimulus and foreign expenditures, beyond $36 billion in wasted unemployment payments, $4.3 billion in bad loans from the Paycheck Protection Program. Congress spent $250 million to build border walls in the Middle East and North Africa, and $179 million in the State Department to fund green energy programs in Africa. More recently, Paul attempted to block the $40 billion Ukraine spending package. Yeah, those 6 pennies, those are rookie numbers. Can we get that number up to a $0.50? Perhaps? 50 cents for every dollar. Gone. Cut out of the spending. I'm ambitious. But thank you, Rand Paul, for that. All right, now we get to start talking about some of the big news of the day, and most of that, from the top of the show, talks about Biden. But we'll start with this one here. Former Biden aide says high gas prices won't matter if an insurrection is successful, and y'all living under martial law. From Carlos Garcia. And of course, it's Simone Sanders. A former top aide to President Biden said gas prices won't matter if people are living under martial law after an insurrection is successful. Simone Sanders made the comments on the Hell and High Water podcast with John Heilman, released on Tuesday. Sanders was defending Republican Liz Cheney of Wyoming when she criticized progressive. Back up. Think about that for just a second. Top Democrat aide, Simone Sanders, is defending Liz Cheney. Let that sentence play out in your mind a few times. A top Democrat aide is praising and defending a Cheney, a warmonger. When she criticized progressives for saying the televised January 6th committee hearing was not relevant because gas prices were so high. What she is doing matters. It matters for our democracy, said the spokesperson for the Mono Party. Those people at the Capitol that day, they went home. That's the thing. That really keeps me up at night. For people that said they didn't watch the first hearing, I got into a very spirited debate with some of my young people. And I'm like, do y'all not care? And they're like, oh, but gas, she continued. The gas won't matter if an insurrection is successful and y'all living under martial law. So I really think that that people have... Yeah, I can't listen to this. I can't read that one. Let's listen to this.
Liz Cheney's words matter. I saw a lot of people criticizing, a lot of Democrats trying to criticize Liz Cheney on Twitter last night. A lot of my progressive friends, okay? You know, I love my progressive people.
A lot of Democrats have been criticizing Liz Cheney rightly since her dad was the vice president.
My people, but Liz Cheney, yes, is a real Republican. I do not agree with her on about 90% of the thing. You know, she voted with Donald Trump 96% of the time when he was president. But what she's doing matters. It matters for our democracy. Those people at the Capitol that day, they went home, John. And that's the thing that really keeps me up at night. And for people that said they didn't watch the first hearings, I got into a very spirited debate with some of my young people friends. And I'm like, do y'all not care? And they're like, oh, but gas. I'm like, the gas won't matter if an insurrection is successful and y'all living under martial law. So I really think that people have to... I think last night was great, but I do think that everyone just needs to take a breather. And if you think that January 6th doesn't matter, if you think this is something that just happened, you know, well over a year and a half ago at this point, and we need to move on, you are sorely mistaken.
Listen to my entire conversation with Simone Sanders.
Yeah, what part of that looked like it was going to be martial law? That's the question I have for that. But there you go. That's Simone Sanders for you. Stop worrying about gas. It could be martial law. So, I have not watched this video yet, but apparently, and I've seen a couple of people say the same thing, apparently this is the greatest video you'll see today. I don't know how big the chat is right now, but we can take a vote. 1 for greatest video, 2 for not the greatest video you'll see today. But let's watch this one.
Before I took office, there were a lot of folks out there making some pretty bold predictions about how things would turn out. You might remember some of the predictions.
They're coming for your guns, they're coming for your jobs, and they're coming for your freedom. They hate American energy, and Joe Biden will shut it all down. He's going to.
That if I became president...
Biden's elected, he will wipe out your energy industry.
Another prediction, that is my favorite one, I must add, is that if I got elected...
Gas prices going $5, $6, $7 for a gallon. Flood your communities with criminal aliens, drugs, and crime while they live behind beautiful gated compounds. They try to take away your gun, Second Amendment, they want to take it away, while they enjoy private security that's fully armed.
I never understood that one.
You spent trillions of dollars rebuilding foreign nations, fighting foreign wars, and defending foreign borders.
So for all those predictions of doom and gloom 6 months in, here's where we stand.
Do you want to use the word recession or depression?
Think of the single mom struggling to put food on the table each month.
You know, it's sad.
So if your primary concern right now is inflation...
We could stop it in 30 minutes.
When I took office,
He finally went outside. He went to get an ice cream.
look, the bottom line.
I said he's doing a very good job. Because he can't take any questions now from the press.
Okay, that was funny. I'm glad I waited to get the authentic reaction to that. That was funny. I like that. When I took office, he finally went outside and got an ice cream. Oh, that was good. I like that. Thank you, Benny Johnson. From NBC 10 out of Philadelphia. In Philly, Biden focuses on workers as high inflation remains a risk. From Rudy Chinchilla. Let's wait and see. I was going to say, we got more videos. This is going to be more video from outside of what we saw, but I got a couple clips here, and if I'm not satisfied with what they are, then we'll go and look and see what this one is too. President Biden told the largest federation of labor unions on Tuesday that he's working to rebuild the U.S. economy around workers, attempt to draw a contrast with Republicans who have increasingly attracted blue-collar votes. We should encourage unions, Biden said. I'm not saying that to be pro-union. I'm saying that because I'm pro-American. The speech before the AFL-CIO convention in Philadelphia was the president's attempt to reset the term of the debate on the economy, as the president's own approval ratings have slid while consumer prices and the cost of gasoline have surged. Inflation at a more than 40-year high has caused voters to sour on the economy despite a recovery after the pandemic-induced downturn has led to a robust hiring and healthy 3.6% unemployment rate. The president on Tuesday tried to remind his audience of the food lines and layoffs during the coronavirus pandemic that preceded his presidency, contrasting that with the improvements in household balance sheets under his watch. What? Okay, again, I ask. What improvement in household balance sheets are you referencing? Guys, I got $1 raise this year. And yet I'm still not having as much left over at the end of each month as I was pre-pandemic. Or even into the midst of the pandemic, because I was an essential worker and my job didn't get affected. What improvement in household balance sheet are you seeing? But even as the economy has quickly amassed jobs, which means opening jobs back up that were there to begin with, inflation has left many workers feeling worse off as wages have not kept up with the cost of living. The Labor Department said Friday that average hourly earnings after adjusting for inflation have fallen 3% over the past year. See, that's what I'm saying. Inflation has left Biden and Democrats' control of the House and Senate vulnerable in the upcoming midterm elections. Lawmakers have blamed the president's $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief package and the infrastructure bill for causing inflation to start rising last year. GOP lawmakers also say the Biden admin has been too restrictive on domestic oil production. So, not a lot of detail about the event itself, but a lot of detail about what's going on actually in the admin. Let's listen to what the man had to say. Let's start with this. And again, we might actually jump back in and grab this video from NBC 10.
I don't want to hear any more of these lies about reckless spending. We're changing people's lives. I don't want to hear any more of these lies.
Oh, they're changing people's lives, all right. Just not in a good way. What else do we have? A little bit of pandering for his donors.
Time we push. And unions Unions are going to play a critical role in that future. America's always counted on union workers. Give me just half a chance. You have never, ever, ever, ever let the country down. We're counting on you again to build this country for all of us. Help build an economy that works for working people. And I promise you, I'm going to keep fighting for you. Are you prepared to fight with me? Time we push.
He must have got the good drugs this time. Look at him. All right, let's walk back here. Let's see what this one is, because this is, I mean, that was an 8-second clip and a 27-second clip, so. That is a newscast.
Now.
20 minutes of nonstop news begins with President Biden. Inflation the U.S. has seen in decades. Pennsylvania Convention Center joining us now.
Biden flying into Philly.
The most labor-friendly.
Yeah, never mind. Not a clip of it. I thought it was going to be a clip of it. That was on me. But I'm telling you right now, President Biden doesn't want to hear what you have to say about inflation and how bad that's hurting your wallets. He doesn't want to hear what you think about the spending going on in Washington. He's changing people's lives, don't you know? So don't complain about that. Just praise. Hail Biden. Quest, which link are you looking for? Because I can do that when we're watching the next video. Just let me know which one you're looking for. All right. Let's look at one from the New York Post. Biden says he's changing people's lives. Critics say, yeah, for the worse. Wait, I just said that. Am I a Biden critic? Oh, wait, yeah, I am. From Steve Nelson. Finally, a statement President Biden and his critics can both agree on. The House plant-in-chief insisted during a speech to the AFL-CIO union members in Philadelphia Tuesday that government spending was changing people's lives. His opponents ironically concurred, pointing to an annual inflation that has soared to 8.6% last month. I don't want to hear any more of these lies about reckless spending. We're changing people's lives, Biden shouted at one point during his remarks. Man. And by the way, that sounded so Soviet style too. Under President Biden, Americans' lives have changed for the worse, tweeted Rep. Mike Rogers of Alabama. President Biden is right, tweeted Senator John Kennedy. 40-year high inflation, formula shortages, and $5 gas are changing lives. You're changing their lives, all right, snarked Josh Hawley. $5 a gallon. Gas, no baby formula, historic inflation, historic crime wave. And I guess I don't usually go on the historic crime wave because, you know, I live out in the country where most people wouldn't dare. The president invoked two large spending bills, his $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, which Democrats passed last year without Republican support, and last year's $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill. The rescue plan wasn't offset by a new revenue, and therefore contributed to the $30.5 trillion national debt. The Congressional Budget Office said the infrastructure bill will add $256 billion to the federal deficit. The larger bill gave state and local governments around $350 billion, along with $1,400 stimulus checks to most Americans, an extended $300 weekly unemployment supplement, and an expanded annual child tax credit, $3,000 to $3,600, up from $2,000 per child. Biden has previously said the spending improved people's lives while also causing them to compete for scarce resources. The irony is people have more money to spend now because the first major piece of legislation passed. You all got checks for $1,400. You got checks for a whole range of things, Biden said in November. It changes people's lives. But what happens if there's nothing to buy and you've got more money to compete for getting goods? It creates a real problem. If your life has life has been changed by $1,400, you're doing something wrong. I know, because I've been in a position in my life where $1,400 would have changed my life. And at the time, I was doing something wrong. So that's what we see for that. The one we move forward here, Biden acknowledges inflation sapping the strength of a lot of families as economists prepare for the Fed to raise interest rates. A fired-up President Biden spoke to a friendly crowd of union supporters Tuesday, hoping to put a positive spin on his economic record amid inflation not seen in decades and blame Republicans for blocking his domestic agenda. Speaking to the AFL-CIO convention in Philly, Biden sought to reassure American people that tackling the worst inflation the nation has seen in decades remains a top priority for him and is adamant. The speech came a day before the Federal Reserve could raise interest rates as much as 0.75% as it attempts to get inflation under control. The issue has been bedeviling Biden and his White House for months after they downplayed inflation concerns last year. The president acknowledges that inflation is sapping the strength of a lot of families, but as the price of gas and food skyrockets, an issue being made worse by Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. But even as he sought to emphasize his admin is fully focused on the problem, the president conceded he is left without many options to fight the price hikes, particularly in a narrowly divided Senate that has blocked the bulk of Biden's domestic agenda. Well, I hate to tell you this, Joey. The problem is that they are blocking this because if your domestic agenda were to be allowed to go through, take that 8.6 number and double it. The problem is those evil Republicans. I said that the buck would stop with me, but I mean, the buck would stop with me, and I wouldn't blame my political opponents like my predecessor. But it's all my political opponents' fault. They're doing everything that they can to stop my plans, to bring down costs on ordinary families. That's why my plan is not finished, and why the results aren't finished either, Biden said. The president continued, jobs are back, but prices are still too high. The first time in his presidency that he's acknowledged that they are pre-existing jobs that have just come back, not new jobs created. COVID is down, but gas prices are up. Our work isn't done, but here's the deal, Fat. America still has a choice to make. A choice between a government by the few, for the few, or a government for all of us. Democracy for all of us. An economy where all of us have a fair shot, a chance to earn our place in the economy. Well, he's absolutely right on that. Unfortunately, he thinks that he's on the all of us side when, for the elites, for Hunter and everything else, he is on the few side. Because remember, in 2019, many of us were 2019 were buying things that we couldn't buy before because there were people competing for a dollar. That truck sitting outside, that white Ford, was an unbelievable pipe dream in 2014 for me when it was new. And now it's sitting outside. It's a reality. The 2018-2019 economy was an economy for all of us. But that doesn't fit on with the Democrat agenda. From Fox, Biden lashes out at critics and deflects blame for soaring inflation. Twitter responds, During a Tuesday address at the AFL-CIO, America's largest federation of labor unions, a defiant and combative president pushed back on the claims as his admin had some share of the blame in contributing to the country's economic woes, including 40-year high inflation. And he said, because it's always Vladimir Putin, and it's been Vladimir Putin since 2015, just so you know. I've done everything in my power to blunt Putin's gas price hike. Just since he's invaded Ukraine, it's gone up $1.74 a gallon because of nothing else but that. Yeah, and unfortunately, it was already going up considerably by that point. People were already feeling the pain at the pump at Christmas of last year at $2.89. In another instance, Biden slammed criticism that inflation is high because of reckless government spending. Yeah, we saw that speech.
About reckless spending. We're changing people's lives.
Guy Benson tweets out, Dems 2022. Shut the F up and be thankful, you ignorant ingrates. American Greatness senior fellow Ned Ryan amended Biden's claims of changing people's lives, tweeting, changing people's lives for the worst. There's the I did that sticker. Virginia Fox tweets out, I'll take the American people aren't buying this talking point for $5,000, Alex. So those are some more of the responses to this. Let's see. Let's grab them from the Daily Wire. Oh, jeez. And I put this on the stack, and I still can't believe this is an actual headline. Joe Biden proclaims June 15th World Elder Abuse Day. All right, let's start talking about your admin. And it's ironic that that comment from Quest Fanning just now came in as I'm reading this. Now, there's a little bit of a delay, so he hasn't heard this yet, but... But yeah, because of the time delay from my screen over here to DLive, at the exact time I read that headline is when I saw the change your diaper before you try to change other people's lives comment. That's great.
So I want to thank you both, and I want to thank the former general. I keep calling him general, but the guy who runs that outfit over there. I want to make sure we thank the secretary for all he's done to try to implement what we've just talked about, and for recommending these two women for promotion. Thank you all. May God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
You've been listening to President Biden marking international.
Yeah, we don't really need to talk much about elder abuse today, Dave, except for the fact that we get to watch it happen every day. From the Blaze. That's not even a question we should be asking. Token Diversity Hire responds after CNN's Don Lemon asks whether Biden has the mental and physical stamina to serve past 2024. Let's just listen.
Does the president have the stamina, physically and mentally, do you think, to continue on even after 2024?
Don, you're asking me this question. Oh my gosh, he's the president of the United States. You know, I can't even keep up with him. We just got back from New Mexico. We just got back from California. That is not a question that we should be even asking. Just look at the work that he does. Look how he's delivering for the American public. Look, that article that we're talking about is hearsay. It's salacious. That's not what we care about. We care about how are we going to deliver for the American people? How are we going to make their lives better? That's what the president talks about. That is his focus, and that's where we're going to continue to focus on.
Don't ask that question. We might not like the answer. Thank you, Token Diversity Hire. Hunter Biden. Saying the quiet part out loud. Come on. There you go. He'll talk about anything that I want him to. Hunter Biden talks relationship with father in uncovered audio. Hunter Biden, the disgraced heir of the president, bragged to a friend in 2018 about the influence he has over his father, saying the now president would take any public position his son wanted. Hunter appears to have recorded a conversation on his phone and then uploaded it to his laptop that he later abandoned at a Delaware computer shop. The Washington Examiner located the exact recording in a password-protected backup of his iPhone on a copy of the laptop's hard drive. Do we have the audio? We don't have the audio. He'll talk about anything that I want him to, that he believes in, Hunter says in the recording. If I say it's important to me, then he will work in a way which to make it a part of his platform. My dad respects me more than he respects anyone in the world. That's probably part of the problem. And I know to be certain, so it's not going to be about whether it affects his politics. All those fears you think that I have of people not liking me or that I don't love myself, I don't fear that. You know why I don't fear it? Because the man I most admire in the world, that God, to me, thinks I'm a god, Biden continued. And my brother too. On the three of us. It was literally, I had the support to know I can do anything. So, is this who's running the country? Is Hunter the one that's running this? That gives me more questions than answers. And is a little bit eerie, by the way. To think that a crack-addled Biden is the one that's running this. Not a dementia drug-addled Biden. Oh, we have a message from our great propagandist-in-chief, Liz Cheney. She has a message for you ahead of today's hearing. Are you ready?
Yesterday, the Select Committee's hearing showed all Americans that President Trump's claims of a stolen 2020 election were, to use former Attorney General Barr's words, complete nonsense. We heard this from Donald Trump's own campaign experts, his own campaign lawyers, his own campaign manager, his Attorney General, and others Donald Trump appointed to leadership positions in the U.S. Department of Justice. President Trump's advisors knew what he was saying was false, and they told him so directly and repeatedly. The testimony from our first two hearings is available on the Select Committee's website, so all Americans can easily view it. In our next hearing...
Just so you know, it's not the full testimony, it's the selectively edited version that they put out here.
On Thursday, the Select Committee will examine President Trump's relentless effort on January 6th and in the days beforehand to pressure Vice President Pence to refuse to count lawful electoral votes. As a federal judge has indicated, this likely violated 2 federal criminal statutes. President Trump had no factual basis for what he was doing, and he had been told it was illegal. Despite this, President Trump plotted with a lawyer named John Eastman and others to overturn the outcome of the election on January 6th. To give you a sense of the gravity of these issues, here is a clip of one of President Trump's own White House lawyers, Eric Hirschman, who talked to Mr. Eastman the day after January 6th.
It was the day after. Eastman, I don't remember why he called me, or he texted me or called me, wanted to talk with me, and he said he couldn't reach others. And he started to ask me about something dealing with Georgia and preserving something potentially for appeal. And I said to him, "Are you out of your effing mind?" Right? He said, I only want to hear 2 words coming out of your mouth from now on. Orderly transition. And I screamed, I said, I don't want to hear any other effing words coming out of your mouth, no matter what, other than orderly transition. Repeat those words to me. And I screamed,
What did he say?
Eventually he said, orderly transition. I said, good, John. Now I'm going to give you the best free legal advice you're ever getting in your life. Get a great effing criminal defense lawyer. You're going to need it. And then I hung up on him.
No context, no ideas of what's actually happening with this, no mention of what the president actually said. Just another selectively edited clip from the propaganda committee. This is what our country has devolved into. Something on the ratings for this, Meghan McCain. The highly produced, yet stunningly boring January 6th committee hearing gave me more reason to fear that the Capitol riot may become a tragic milestone in America's decline instead of a footnote in our history. From Meghan herself. The Select House Committee investigating the January 6th Selfie Fest premiered in primetime on Thursday. It was a predictable flop. The presentation to reveal the committee's findings started at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, just after I put my daughter to bed. Like most Americans, I had other things that I'd rather do. But nonetheless, I asked my husband to turn it on downstairs so I could watch after I was done with her. I presume, like most Americans, I was left thinking, what was the point of that? I remember January 6th, as we all do, one of the darkest days. I was in D.C. and saw Trump supporters collecting near the Capitol before the riots. I watched it unfold in real time on television after I got home from work. It was petrifying, an embarrassment to our country, and the final nail in the coffin, as far as I was concerned, with President Trump's legacy. Okay, go pray to Daddy again. My sister-in-law, Emily, who was an advisor to Congressman Kevin McCarthy, had her office ransacked and her desk defaced. Friends of ours had to barricade themselves in their offices and found blunt objects to defend themselves in case they were attacked. There's no way to downplay January 6th, and I wouldn't dare. Oh, there's a lot of way to downplay that. I believe every single person involved in criminal activities that day should face the full weight of the law. There should be also consequences for everyone, including President Trump, who may have instigated the Selfie Fest and did nothing to stop it. But I also believe that's critical that we get to the root of the extremism that inspired so many people to believe that there was no other alternative in our great country than to storm the Capitol after their candidate lost. Thursday night's events, however, did not advance any of these goals. In fact, this highly produced yet stunningly boring presentation may even make matters worse in this country. Well, yeah, I mean, it's firing up, and I can't believe I'm about to say this. Meghan McCain is right. This is firing up the people who weren't going to have their minds changed anyway. The people who were going to vote like reliable, full-on, never ever waver Democrats are going to get fired up by this. But everyone else is looking at the gas pump, the gas tank, the grocery bill, their vacation plans, the stuff they got invited to 6 months ago, and saying, what do I do? And all for this, for a highly edited, television-produced hearing that is full-on propaganda to rile up again people who already believed what they're telling them. This is a confirmation for people who already believed everything that's being said here. I can't believe I just said Meghan McCain was right. I can't believe I just said a McCain was right. What's happening in this world? Cherry-picked polling. Morning consult poll. 63% of Americans believe DOJ should bring legal action against elected officials who misled Americans about the outcome of the election. 67% believe DOJ should bring legal action against elected officials who attempted to overturn the results of the election. I would be careful with that, Mr. Griffin, because we have an election coming up that your people, Mr. MSDNC, are not going to accept. And both of these things, people are guilty of in 2016. From Fox, Kavanaugh neighbor describes horrific experience dealing with aggressive pro-choice protesters. From Adam Shaw, a neighbor of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh says the pro-choice protesters, who march multiple times a week down the street in the evening, have shaken up residents' homes and disrupted their lives, as they detailed the alleged abuse received by neighbors from protesters, while saying authorities have done little to help them. The neighbor, who spoke on condition of anonymity, said that while there had been intermittent protests before, they picked up after the leak of the draft court opinion that would overturn the Roe v. Wade ruling. And that's the point. They're trying to make your neighbors crack, so your neighbors go tell you, hey, just leave it in place, okay? I want these people out from in front of my house. The neighbor said it was overwhelmingly people from outside the area who were organizing the protest, not people from the area, and specified how it was both a regular occurrence and organized. There are people who came from out of the area. They have a staging point in a parking lot fairly nearby, the source says. Protesters typically appear 2 evenings a week on Wednesdays and Saturdays and come in the evening around 7 p.m. when many of the local residents are putting their children to bed, a task made difficult when loud protesters are marching up and down the street. That's when people are putting their kids to bed. There's little kids who live on my street. It's a horrific experience, the source said. It's not great if you have kids of any age, but it's unbelievably stressful, and the kids are very upset. The kids have to be sent inside, and it's so loud you can't put your kids to sleep. They picked the exact time and they don't care. They said, literally, there's no way on a Wednesday night you can put your kid to bed. While there are ground rules set by law enforcement, the source said the protesters are loud and intimidating, with chants that warn of riots if they don't get what they want. And there have even been instances of protesters abusing the neighbors as well, they said. They have drummers, they have a megaphone, and they chant, they yell all kinds of things. They have told neighbors, F you, F your children, things like that, and so they're abusive towards the neighbors and intimidating. This is archived, otherwise that's the sound of the call, but it's archived. We can't play that one. They go in the street. We've been told that because they will move eventually when a car comes down the street. They're not technically blocking the street, they said. The resident notes that there are noise ordinances that limit things like leaf blowers, and yet those ordinances are apparently not followed by the protesters. No, because they don't know and they don't care. They're doing this so you come out and put pressure on Kavanaugh just to come back out and just let this one go, all right? It's intimidation of a judicial official, and it's illegal. From the Hill, House passes expanded security for Supreme Court justices' families. 27 Democrats vote no. From Michael Schnell, the House passed a bill on Tuesday that would provide security protections to family members of Supreme Court justices, sending the measure to President Biden's desk for approval. The legislation, dubbed the Supreme Court Police Parity Act, cleared the House in a 396-27 vote, with only Democrats objecting to the measure. Passage in the lower chamber comes from more than a month after the Senate approved the bill by unanimous consent, meaning all 100 lawmakers signed off on the measure, allowing it to clear without having to go through a formal vote. The bill offers around-the-clock security protection to family members of Supreme Court justices and any officer of the bench if the court-martial deems it necessary, protections similar to those of some executive and congressional officials. Supreme Court justices already have federal protection. The month-long delay was a result of a standoff between the House and Senate. Democrats in the lower chamber wanted to pass an expanded bill that also offered protections to Supreme Court staff, including judicial clerks. The court-martial deemed it necessary. Republicans, however, refused to pass that bill. Minority Leader Mitch McConnell told reporters on Monday the House version is not going to pass the Senate. The security issue is related to the Supreme Court justices, not nameless staff that no one knows, he added. On Tuesday, Steny Hoyer revealed that the House would vote on the Senate bill sponsored by Cornyn and Chris Coons. Asked why Democrats have decided to accept the Senate version as written, Hoyer said, I really can't give you an explanation because adding more employees doesn't seem like a very controversial thing to do. Hoyer added that he was surprised by Senate pushback to the expanded proposal, but it is what it is. We're going to move the bill, he said. Well, first off, there's the feasibility. I mean, there are, as far as I understand, hundreds of people who work in the Supreme Court as clerks. I mean, we see all the names, like everybody who has been up on there as, clerk for this justice, clerk for that justice. This person is qualified because he or she clerked for this person here. And there are a bunch of people like that. But I'm going to say something that's probably a little bit unpopular. If I was a representative, I would probably have voted against this. It has nothing to do with protection. I want these people to be protected, but they've already got federal protection, government provided, and the means with the government salary and kickbacks, but we don't talk about that, to provide their own protection as well. The problem that I have with this is that this does make the people's institutions more untenable. Put these people up on a higher pedestal. Now, the Supreme Court is not beholden to the people, like the House and to a lesser extent the Senate. That much I understand. That's why I said probably instead of absolutely not vote for this. But remember, I mean, what were the complaints when the National Mall had the unscalable fence around it for months? This is the people's house, and it is. The White House, the Secret Service, you can't get close to the president. You can't have a conversation with the man unless you're Jimmy Kimmel. This is putting more and more of our government onto an ivory hill, looking down on us peasants and plebes. And that is not a government by the people for the people. Now, I'd be open to be convinced to go another way off of this. But as I see it from where I sit right now, I probably would have voted against this too. If I'm being completely honest. Now, if they were men of not means, that possibly weren't able to, by government salary, afford private security, or they didn't have federal protection already, then I would probably vote to say, yes, let's get some protection for these people. But the fact that they already have it, and then they also have the means for additional private security, that's what makes me look at this and say, are these the people up on the ivory hill that are looking down on us? So, and again, that may be an unpopular opinion, but that's the way that I look at it right now. Now, as I usually do, we will continue the same pattern that I normally keep off this, and I will not be doxing the people who voted against these protections, because I don't believe in that. I think that is a sham way to run a government, and again, run the ivory tower, but there were 27 Democrats who voted against, and it was all but one member of the squad. And again, I'm not going to go back and read the names. Fox News can come back and do that, and for shame, for shame. And I don't believe in that. But Fox News wants you to know who all these people were. More on the Kavanaugh thing. John Cooper. Not the John Cooper who's annoying. Looks like a John Cooper who's actually someone I can stand. Wow. Token diversity hire just falsely claimed Joe Biden condemned the attempted assassination on Kavanaugh. Biden himself has not said a word since the attempt was foiled.
You mean in with as it relates to the decision? So wanted to be really clear. the Department of Justice, as it relates to Kavanaugh, has U.S. Marshals providing support to the Supreme Court Marshal, and the President supports legislation to fund increased security for court and judges. And it is now been reported that the Marshals, our administration assigned to help protect judges, were instrumental in the person not accomplishing the horrible deed he set out to do. This is the threat that we saw against Kavanaugh, and so we have taken this very seriously. Like you said, we have condemned it. The president has, and we will continue to do so. You mean in?
Yeah, no, he hasn't said a word. Here's a call to action for you. My friend in New York might find this interesting because this is adjacent probably to his district. Come on, there you go. Squad Rep Bowman predicts civil war. GOP take control in the midterms. How is this not an insurrection, by the way? From Kelly Pattison. Jamal Bowman warned of a stark outcome if Republicans take back power in the November midterm elections. One that would embolden far-right extremists and white nationalists who he claims have been pushing for civil war. He's talking about Tim Pool. During a Saturday interview with MSDNC's The Cross Connection with Tiffany Cross, the Bronx Westchester member of Congressional Squad led by socialist darling Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez, claimed that Republicans will take action to halt Democratic progress in the investigation into the January 6th Selfie Fest, saying the House Select Committee's findings would be completely suppressed. Bowman also claimed the GOP would impeach President Biden as quickly as possible, and they will continue to find ways to impeach him going forward. But Bowman went on to warn that Republicans gaining control of the House or Senate would embolden dangerous and violent extremists to take further control. It would also embolden Republicans of the far right and white nationalists across the country to begin to believe that this is their time, not just to take power in the House, but the Senate and the White House and the state houses across the country, Bowman said. We've got to understand that this is a group who's been radicalized by the Great Replacement myth that you people brag about that you're doing. And many other things, and have been pushing for violence and pushing for even civil war. So that is what's at stake right now in terms of this election. Our democracy is hanging by a thread, and black and brown people, our lives are in the balance if these people come back into power, Bowman added. The progressive lawmakers' warning of further division among the party comes as 44% of Americans believe the U.S. seems headed towards civil war in the near future, according to an April survey. Yeah, I don't think that this was a warning that the right is going to do this. I think that this is a warning that the left is going to start a civil war if they don't get their way. Some midterm news for you here. Because apparently, somebody found something out about Lauren Boebert, which I don't really believe, I'm going to be completely honest. But Cenk Uygur, if Lauren Boebert escort and abortion story is true, then I can't wait to see what Republican voters are going to do about someone who's had 2 abortions while claiming to be pro-life. My guess is they won't care at all. They never mean anything they say except hating us. Google it! So the stories come out, and I haven't seen any major news network pick it up right now, but the rumors going around that because of an Explore Talent advertisement that came out, that Lauren Boebert was apparently a hooker before this, allegedly. I don't know if this is true or not. But she was allegedly, apparently, a hooker at some point. This reeks to me of the same thing they did to Cawthorn, trying to turn the evangelicals against the woman. so she gets primaried back out. Now, I can't vote for Lauren. I don't know that I would. Because she doesn't seem like she's that smart. But if the people of Colorado want her there, of her district, that's between Lauren Boebert and the people of her district. But people like Cenk say, oh, look, single issue. Look, you say that she's Christian. Well, look at her. She's not Christian. I know there was an argument going on in my mentions, actually, when I got up this morning about that, too. So, yeah, that's what they're doing with Lauren Boebert right now. Some good news. And they've already got the Decision 2022 headliner up there. Republican Mayra Flores flips House seat in Texas special election. Flores fills the South Texas seat previously held by Democratic Rep. Philemon Vela, who resigned in March. She will have to run for re-election in November, which... It's a little weird to me that they're having a special election. Usually when somebody retires from a House seat, that seat remains vacant through the rest of the term, I thought. I know the Senate, because of the longer term, that gets appointed by the governor. From Rebecca Shabbat, Republicans picked up a seat in the House on Tuesday with a projected win of Mayra Flores in the Texas special election to fill a seat previously held by a Democrat. Flores defeated Democrat Dan Sanchez to represent the state's 34th congressional district by about 51 to 43% of the vote, with 97% of the expected vote in, NBC News projects. The Republican fills a seat held by Rep. Philemon Vela, the previous chair of the Democratic National Committee, who resigned in late March to take a job with the law and lobbying firm Aiken Gump. Flores, who worked as a healthcare worker and touted her husband's job as a Border Patrol agent in campaign ads, was leading candidate in polls ahead of the election. Sanchez, who works as an attorney, trailed Flores in fundraising and barely aired any ads. Flores will hold the seat until January under district's old lines. In November, there'll be a general election to decide who represents the new 34th district, which favors Democrats much more than the current district. The nominees for that race will have already been decided in the normal primary process. Flores will face off against Vicente Gonzalez under the new lines. Now, again, this is almost a throwaway because, she's got a good 7 months left in that seat on a 2-year term. And then, yes, the lines are being redrawn off of this, but realistically, even on a 7-month seat, that's the first time, statistically, in 150 years, this seat has gone Republican. So, we'll see what happens with that. We'll see if it goes. I'm kind of curious to see if the new seat in the new district keeps Flores in. Because that'll be the big harbinger of what's going to happen in 2024. More midterm news. Pennsylvania House Republicans initiate process to impeach DA Larry Krasner. Widespread lawlessness in the city of Philadelphia. From CBS 3 staff. Pennsylvania House Republicans have initiated the process to impeach DA Larry Krasner due to what they call unchecked crime. 3 House Republicans from Western Pennsylvania, Josh Kale, Torrin Ecker, and Tim O'Neill, say that they've been drafting articles of impeachment involving Philadelphia's DA since the South Street mass shooting. Last week, 3 people were killed and 11 were injured in a shooting on Philadelphia's popular South Street. This was the final straw in their decision to seek impeachment. Many people agree that Philly has a crime problem. A group of Republican lawmakers calling for the impeachment of Philly's DA is not from Philadelphia, not even from its suburbs, but they insist that they know what's right for Philadelphia. We're here to announce articles of impeachment against Philadelphia DA Larry Krasner, Kale said. mispronouncing D.A. Krasner's name and speaking from Harrisburg, a group of lawmakers from western Pennsylvania announced they're circulating a co-sponsorship memo for supporters of the articles of impeachment and believe it will receive bipartisan support. We fully anticipate this to be a bipartisan effort. We fully anticipate to gather quite a bit of support amongst this effort because, quite honestly, the dereliction of duty and the failure of Krasner is well known across the Commonwealth, Kale said. While explaining what motivated them to start this process, one of the lawmakers incorrectly referred to the South Street shooting as the South Side shooting. So, it sounds to me like CBS Local is trying to discredit this as much as they can. Oh, he mispronounced his name. Oh, he said South Side instead of South Street. But, again, we've got these DAs who are ignoring certain crimes because they don't fit their political agenda and hammering down on certain other people because they do fit the political agenda. And this should be equal protection under the law. If somebody's going to come out and shoot you, that person should be going away. If somebody's going to be, revolving door, come back in, go back out, and commit more crime, and they think that having a different DA who's harder on crime is going to do better for that, then that's between them and the people of Philadelphia. I'm kind of interested to see where this goes. Sonny Hostin from The Blaze, The View. Sonny Hostin says Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg would obliterate Trump or DeSantis in 2024. You know what we're going to do. We're going to listen to this.
We need somebody who can get the country back on line, in line.
Yeah.
Because if you can name me a Republican who has a shot to do that, that's what I'm more interested in. Because
I think it'll be DeSantis. I hope it's not DeSantis over in Florida because I think he's a fascist. DeSantis. I think he handled COVID miserably. I think he's a fascist and a bigot. But
those are his good points.
Those are his good points. Exactly. Bing,
Don't
bing.
hold back, Sonny.
Bing, bing. And I hate this talk about. I think people saying that he's too old. I mean, if the former, twice impeached, disgraced president thinks he's such a young spring chicken. I mean, he's going to be 78 when Joe Biden is 81, and so I don't like this ageism argument. But I will say,
true.
yeah,
And also Biden, when he was here, I asked him. He works out every day.
Yeah,
I don't think Trump does. Take a look.
Yeah, I mean, take a look. Exactly.
Yeah.
But I do think there are plenty of Democrats that have tons of verve and energy. I mean, I like Gavin Newsom because he's really pretty to look at, and I think he does a great job in California.
Oh my God.
I like Kamala and Pete Buttigieg.
I love Pete
ticket.
Buttigieg.
I think that looks great.
You think they could win, really?
Well, I would vote for them.
Of course,
I hope this country is ready for something like that. I think the brain power alone would just obliterate Trump or
I would just love to see us.
She had to sneak in the DeSantis. I like Gavin because he's really pretty to look at. Yeah. There's your political aspirations right there. On the Daily Caller. An outlet I don't use very often because they are actually not green check verified. So we'll go over this one briefly. Even blue states think Biden's EV charging station plan needs a reality check. From Thomas Catenacci. Several western states, including Democrat-led New Mexico and Colorado, have pushed back on Brandon's electric vehicle plan, saying they aren't feasible. The states, which also include Utah, Wyoming, and Montana, said it wouldn't be possible to construct the number of EV charging stations that the Biden admin has outlined as necessary for its climate agenda. The Wall Street Journal reported Monday the Department of Transportation said Thursday that states receiving federal funds for EV charging stations must position such facilities every 50 miles along the highway as part of its $5 billion plan to build the national charging network unveiled in February. I would definitely appreciate more flexibility in charging infrastructure and rest areas, Colorado Governor Jared Polis said, according to the Wall Street Journal. Polis and Idaho Governor Brad Little asked the DOT in January to ensure states had discretion in the construction and placement of EV chargers in a letter on behalf of Western Governors Association, a coalition of all 22 Western governors. In 2021, the WGA issued a special report on EV infrastructure, which stated Western states have struggled to meet defined metrics like the requirement for infrastructure to be built every 50 miles previously outlined by federal agencies. And there is the Mustang Mach-1, which is not a Mustang. I am telling you right off the bat, this is not a Mustang. No amount of ponies on this thing will make this into a Mustang. This is an electric Ford Edge. As far as this goes, the problem is it's not necessarily the infrastructure and the infrastructure bill that's going to come back out and do this. If fueling stations that already exist or fueling stations from the future look at this and say, I can make money from having a charging station in front of my store, in front of my gas station. I can make money from this. They will put it in, and they will put it in out of their own pockets, especially with an EV, which from what I understand, and I've never tried it because I've never owned an EV or driven an EV. From what I understand, it takes, what, an hour, 2 hours to charge it once it's out to battery empty? Anybody who's driven an EV, feel free to push back on me and let me know. Because I don't know. But from what I understand, it takes considerably longer than pulling up to the pump, squeezing the trigger, and then waiting the, at times, if you have a 30-gallon tank, 15 minutes to go charge your, to go refuel your vehicle. I think it's, what is it, like 2 hours to go? 2 hours, maybe 8 hours? I have no idea. But I know it's longer than squeezing the trigger on the pump and going, which leaves you with a captive audience. Somebody who can come in and be sitting there for an hour to buy chips, to buy drinks, to hit the can, to buy brownies, or a hot dog off the rotisserie, or the meal in the attached restaurant. And if these private industries find out that they can make money off of that, they're going to put those charging stations in. Out of their own pockets. Maybe with some government grant and some government help, but for the most part, out of their own pockets. Without government help. Or government mandate, I should say. There will probably be some government help, especially to get the infrastructure to there for the electricity to do so. So, but see, people like this don't understand and don't believe in the free market to do things. The free market is a much stronger force than the government will ever be. All right, we are at 9:17, which means we need to start picking and choosing and skipping around off of this. Because there are a couple more that I do want to get to before we head out of here for the day. So we're going to do this one. I'm going to touch on this one because I promised that one yesterday. So we'll do this one, this one. I'll wait on this one because I want to spend some time on that one. This one. This one and this one. So we've got 5 more that we're going to do. All right, some of the other side, and some of this is for supply chain issue stuff. Inside EVs reports Ford dealer at $69,554 markup to F-150 Lightning. From Ben O'Hare. A Florida Ford dealer, Gary Smith Ford in Fort Walton Beach, is currently asking $140,600 for a relatively well-equipped F-150 Lightning. The Lightning in question had an MSRP of $71,049, which means Gary Smith Ford is applying a simply ludicrous $69,554 market adjustment, almost doubling the price of the truck. Ford has always been strongly against dealership markups. However, thanks to dealer franchise laws, the automaker can do nothing to stop them. Ford did, however, warn dealerships of a $25,000 fine if they sold demo vehicles too soon. Meanwhile, dealers can also get in trouble if they start offering customers premium placement in the waiting list in exchange for more money. This isn't the first case of a dealer applying a $40,000 plus markup on a Lightning. Last month, we reported on a California dealer with numerous Lightning trucks asking over $130,000. And see, now Inside EVs is trying to make this like, oh, well, the evil gas people are trying to keep gas as dominant because they're evil and they want to destroy the environment. But let's think back to January when we covered on this show the Dodge, and it was the off-road, the big engine Dodge pick. Well, it's not Dodge anymore. It's Ram is the brand for pickups now, but the Ram pickup with the off-road package, that was already the most expensive one on the market. It was what was that on base? An $82,000 truck that had a $40,000 markup on it for just the same thing as this. Market adjustment. This is not new, and this is not an exclusively EV thing. Inside EVs is only focusing on this because it's the Lightning. And I also find it funny that even before the markup, the base price on this is $71,000. If your gas is too expensive, just go out and buy a $70,000 EV. Yeah, like I said, the market adjustment, that is on everything. That's just not just on this EV. So Inside EVs, you can take this propaganda piece. Excuse my language for those of you who have the kids in the car on the way and replacing the AM radio with me. Do the earmuffs now. But you can take this propaganda piece and you can shove it up your ass. All right. I promised this one yesterday, so we've got an update on what actually happened in the mall. Agitator causes seconds of chaos, fear at March for Our Lives on National Mall. A brief incident that occurred Saturday during the March for Our Lives rally in the National Mall caused demonstrators to scurry, but appeared to be quickly resolved despite the momentary panic. In a startling moment that broke the silence being held for recent Uvalde, Texas elementary school shooting, a man nearby the stage was heard shouting, "I am the gun," into the crowd while throwing an unidentified object. Many people dashed away from the stage during the few seconds of chaos, and some fell to the ground. Park police said no weapons were found, and the man was escorted away from the rally after his interruption and was detained. Park police said that no threat to the public was found. So that's what happened. Somebody got up there and yelled, "I am the gun," and threw something at people. In a crowd that was packed shoulder to shoulder. I wonder what the COVID concern was about that. The speaker at the moment of the disruption, Erica Ford, a co-architect of the New York City Crisis Management System, shouted at the crowd from the stage, attempting to help people stay calm and urging them not to give the apparent agitator any more attention. "Do not run! Please do not run! There's no issue here!" And yeah, we saw the video yesterday. So that's what happened. I told you I was going to do some digging and figure out what happened here. All right, so this comes out of a tweet thread here, talking from John Cornyn, who is the evil Republican, by the way, the one who wants to have all these red flag laws in place, but as long as we're the trustworthy ones in charge, not those evil other people. Senator Cornyn says these are ideas we rejected in the bipartisan agreement on principles for gun-related legislation announced yesterday. Why? Because we knew that they were included, the bill would not command the votes needed for passage. They rejected universal background checks, assault weapons ban for 18 to 21-year-olds, violation of the 4th and 14th, mandatory waiting period for all gun sales, 21-day waiting period for purchase of firearms for 18 to 21-year-olds, violation of the 14th, high-capacity magazine ban, violation of the 2nd, unconstitutional mandatory safe storage requirements for all firearms at home, 4th and 5th, licensing requirements for purchasing an adult assault weapon, 2nd, 4th, and 5th, criminal penalties for negligent storage of firearms in the home, violation of the 4th and 5th, low mens rea standard for straw purchasing and trafficking firearms, violation of the 4th and 5th. And we go down through the thread. The right to bear arms shall not be infringed upon. Heath Bishop says, how is it being infringed? Can you point to any item there that would infringe on your Second Amendment rights? Keep in mind, no right is absolute, which is wrong in and of itself. Which all of these infringe on your right to keep and bear arms and to defend yourself. Diamond 5 replies, the ridiculous restrictions on suppressors, bump stocks, SBR regulations that only make sense to a schizophrenic, not to mention straight up banning of standard capacity magazines in social estates, and any may issue law in the country, any gun-free city or location. It's a fairly decent list right there. And Hell is a Christmas Playlist says, bump stocks. So you want automatic weapon without it being labeled as an automatic weapon? To which I replied, no, I want an actual automatic weapon. Actually, 30 of them. Maybe 60. It'll depend on how mad the ATF is at me when they finally decide to end my life. Oh, I mean, totally make a legal unwarranted search. Totally make an unwarranted, legally unwarranted search. Yeah, I'm most likely going to die by ATF. That's my prediction. Alright, what else do we want to do? Was it this one? Was there another one? No, we're going to do this one, and then we'll just... Nope, this one and this one. I was going to say, why are there two that I thought it was? Alright, two more. WHO will rename monkeypox virus to combat racism and stigma. Yeah, who could have seen that coming? From Shauna Chen. The WHO said Tuesday will rename the monkeypox virus after concern that it could stoke racism and stigma. The current name for the virus, which has affected 1,600 people in 39 countries this year, was first reported in Africa, does not adhere to WHO guidelines that discourage the use of geographic regions or animals. Bloomberg reports. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said at a briefing that the WHO is working with partners and experts from around the world on changing the name of monkeypox virus, its clades, and the disease it causes. The organization will announce new names as soon as possible, he added. A group of over 30 international scientists called for a name change last week, writing in a letter that a continued reference to a nomenclature of this virus being African is not only inaccurate, but also discriminatory and stigmatizing. The most obvious manifestation is the use of photos of African patients to depict the pox lesions in mainstream media and in the global health. No, that's not why they're doing it. And you know why they're doing it. You all know why they're doing it. Everybody knows why they're doing it. And it has to do with certain of our friends that live in the inner city. This is peak clown world, though. Just peak clown world. Alright, and the last one, and then we'll do something that I'm thankful for, and head out of here for the day. Charlie Sheen reacts to daughter, Sammy Sheen, 18, joining OnlyFans. This did not occur under my roof. So, and I'm going to quote a line from Charlie Sheen from 2.5 Men. After Alan had the kayak and turned abruptly and slammed it into a window. Because the same quote fits here. Given Charlie Sheen's lifestyle, the character that he played on 2.5 Men, the character that he played in Anger Management. Now that his daughter is joining OnlyFans. Yeah, who could have seen that coming? From Stephanie Nolasco. Denise Richards and Charlie Sheen's eldest daughter, Sammy, has joined OnlyFans, and her famous father has some thoughts. She's 18 now and living with her mother, the former 2.5 Men star told Fox News Digital on Tuesday via his publicist, Jeff Ballard. This did not occur under my roof. I do not condone this, and since I'm unable to prevent it, I urge her to keep it classy, creative, and not sacrifice her integrity. The influencer, who has 47,000 followers on Instagram, turned 18 in March. She recently moved back in with Richards, 51, following some turbulent times between the pair. The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills alum told Us Weekly that she's aware of her daughter's latest business venture. Well, Sammy is 18, and this decision wasn't based on whose house she lives in, said the actress. All I can do as a parent is guide her and trust her judgment, but she makes all her own choices. OnlyFans, a subscription-based platform, allows creators to share and monetize their content, which can be explicit. Celebrities such as Carmen Electra, Bella Thorne, Shanna Moakler, and Cardi B, among others, have joined the site to take control of their image and interact with fans. The site became popular during the early months of the coronavirus pandemic when numerous sex workers joined to get paid more safely. The site has been tremendously lucrative for some people, allowing them to earn thousands every month. In August of last year, OnlyFans announced it had 130 million users and 2 million creators who have collectively earned $5 billion. That same month, the site said it suspended its initial plan to ban sexually explicit content following outcry from its creators and advocates for sex workers. So, if you really want a dirty picture of the culmination of genetics between Charlie Sheen and Denise Richards, now's your chance. Now's your opportunity. Ugh. All right. That's what I have to say with that. And now we close out with something I'm thankful for. So, I've been thinking about a lot of things. Father's Day is coming up. And I know that I constantly talk about my parents. and the way that I was brought up. Because, as most of you know, I was brought up in a very, very Democrat household. I was brought up, all Republicans are evil. We have to vote Democrat down the ticket. Otherwise, the evil Bush will win, which, that in and of itself is a scary thought. Another Bush in politics. I just had a shiver run up my spine. But one of the things that I've been thinking about more and more comes down to this economic thing. And it goes on to what Biden had to say. We go back and we check out the speech here and we listen to him once again, talking about what he does and doesn't want to hear. Let's listen to that one more time.
I don't want to hear any more of these lies about reckless spending. We're changing people's lives. I don't want to hear.
So, and that's what he has to say about what he believes the government's role is, to go back and change people's lives. Now, when I was Democrat, when I was more liberal, the idea of being to the left meant that you didn't want the authoritarian Christian, hard right authority tell you that you have to marry whoever you want to have to marry, you have to live by the Bible, everything else. Lifestyle that was so associated with the evangelicals that supported Bush. It is that you wanted to be left alone. Now, the authoritarian movement has shifted out to the left at this point. Like, you have to bake the cake, bigot. You have to say the pronouns, bigot. You have to accept the lifestyle, bigot. Otherwise, you're just a bigot. And by the way, we also have to tax you all of your money, and then we'll decide what it is that you can get back to live on. And something my mom said to me a while ago kind of caught in my head when I heard this speech the first time. When I heard him say this the first time. It caught in the top of my head and it made me realize, when we've been talking about during the midterms, the fact that, your Beto O'Rourke's, your Nikki Fried's, your Charlie Crist's, Stacey Abrams, even campaign Biden. Who's the other one? Anybody who's running as a Democrat against Ron Johnson here in this state. They've all got one thing in common. And you see it all across the state too. The Booker dude from, was it Charlie Booker? From Kentucky. Their entire message is, vote for me. I'm not incumbent Republican. And I was talking to my mom about this a while ago. Even going back, and some of this was during the 2020 campaign, where that seemed to always be what was going on. Vote for me, I'm not the Republican. Vote for me because Republican is bad and I'm not the Republican. And my mom said, I don't care about who you're trying to vote out. Can you give us a platform of what it is that you want to do for us? And that got into my head, and it got me thinking about what happened, when the bottom dropped out on me when I was living in Kenosha, what's happening now, and what politics should mean to people. Because it shouldn't mean what it is that the particular politician can do for you. And I was raised in a situation where you should be self-sufficient first, in spite of the fact that, yes, that sentence came from my mom's mouth. I was raised in a situation where you should be sufficient to yourself first and only turn to the government as a last resort. Now, the government had nothing for me as a last resort. It's part of probably why I became jaded about it. Because I'm proud of the fact that I've never had to have unemployment, no matter how bad it got. I've never had to have any government assistance, no matter how bad it got when I was living in Kenosha and poor. But realistically, I've applied, and I was denied. In spite of being knocked to $10 an hour and working restricted to 25 hours a week, and my job actively making sure that I couldn't go anywhere else. I was sitting in a situation where I still somehow made way too much money. I was above the poverty line. I was in poverty, but was above the poverty line and couldn't have any government benefits. I did apply once because I didn't know what else to do, and I got denied. And that's partially what pushed me into this, but also the idea coming from being raised the way that I was raised of, hey, the government doesn't have your best interest at heart. You need to take care of yourself. You need to make sure you're taken care of. And now, there's 2 months of food stored up in the cabinet over there. Canned goods getting from the grocery store and stuff that I've home canned myself. If I never need it, that's fine. If I never need what's in that cabinet, it's still tasty and it's good to eat. But I don't necessarily have to depend on it to keep me going. But if something were to happen where I would need to depend on it to keep myself going, it's there because of how I was raised and how I was taught. Even on a low-carb diet right now, I have a ton of heavy carb foods because when the bottom drops out, that's what's going to keep you going. It's what's going to keep you moving. It's cheap, it's calorie dense, and you can get a lot of meals out of it for a little bit of money. Especially now when times are good. I'm thankful that what the government can do for me is not the first concern in my mind. Because I don't want them to do anything for me. In fact, one of the biggest, most major factors that I look at when I do decide to vote for somebody is, does this person have a plan to leave me alone and keep his thieving buddies in Washington out of my wallet, or Madison, out of my wallet? And how detailed is it? Is it feasible to keep these parasites out of my wallet? To keep them out of my life, off of my back step? That is the most important thing to me when it comes to going to an election. And I'm thankful for that. There are so many people out there that are dependent on the government for every moment of their lives. Many of them are able-bodied millennials. I am not one of them. I was very afraid that I was going to be at one point, but I am not one of them, and I'm thankful for that. And I hope more and more people my age start to realize that the government doesn't have their best interests at heart. Unfortunately, many of them, coming from the divorce trend of late boomers and Generation X, does bring out the fact that a lot of these people grew up getting whatever they wanted and threatening to go live with mommy or daddy, whichever one would give them the most thing that they want, and expect the parent government to go and do everything for them. I'm very thankful that I'm not one of them. And that's what I'm thankful for. Let's head out of here for the day. All right, so thanks everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat. Everybody who came by and hung out with us today. It was a long one. We got a lot of stuff done though. Yeah, who could have seen that thing with Sammy Sheen coming? Who could have seen the daughter of Charlie Sheen going into a sexual career? Who could have seen that coming from a mile away? But we'll be back here tomorrow morning, catching up on some of the stuff that we left behind here for today and some of the new stuff that's going to happen throughout today. Do remember there is another January 6th hearing today. And while I won't be witnessing it because, well, we see what the propaganda is off of this, we'll catch some of the recaps and some of the replays as well. Looking forward to seeing you here tomorrow morning for more Contemporary. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar. And this is Contemporary. Take care.